You're listening to.
You're
You're
listening.
listening.
Vous écoutez Places.
Places.
And we're live.
Oh, and now that we're live, my cat is deciding that she wants to leave my bedroom, so I'm going to let her out really quick. Sorry.
Do you want me to have my camera on?
It's up to you. Okay.
But I'll listen in.
Okay.
So that there's less pressure. Okay. Sounds good.
Sounds good. I wonder
Ghost
if that
Jeff.
J is just gonna be like in between the video. Okay. Welcome to Places Studio, our mobile headquarters, even though we all live in the same city. Yeah, this is just the easiest way to come together. So, thank you for coming on Places Radio, Luther, making a cameo. Would you like to introduce yourself and a bit of who you are in the city and a bit about your mix?
Yeah, my name is Luther Griggs. I guess I do a lot of things, but in relation to this, I suppose I also DJ under the name Rental Joy, and just recently took my first stab at mixing live on the radio for Places at CFMU. I'm also a musician. I also put on events in the city. I like screen printing. I like going to events. I like hanging out. I like going for walks. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I feel like you're the link between so many folks in the city, like in terms of Hamilton's small. It's like a tight knit space.
For sure.
Very tightly woven. I always say it's like, if it was like a thread count, it'd be like, very much linked. And yeah, I always feel like you're kind of like this linchpin between so many different connections, and partly that's because of the shows you put on, and I guess just like Hamilton has a hardcore scene presence. So,
Yeah, lots of stuff going on. Lots of different things always in Hamilton.
yeah. Something when I was listening to your mix towards the end, when the technical difficulties were making themselves known, and you were talking a bit about kind of the scene and also like your DJ name, Rental Joy, and how it's like symbolic, or I guess figurative, of going out for the night, giving people a joyful experience, but it's temporary. I was wondering if, like, what an experience for you where you feel like you rented joy in Hamilton. What was that like for you? If you can think of anything that kind of like formed your, I guess, like integration into being embodied in dance spaces or music spaces.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I always have a million different answers to this question, and I think that that's okay. I think there are always many things. There's always reinvigoration periods where, like, you fall out of things, and then you attend something or experience something that just gets you really excited again. But I don't know. I guess the first ever like local show I had been to, I think I was like 13 or 14, was at the Casbah. I went to see Attack in Black, and that was really exciting for me. Like, at that point I had seen Attack in Black. They're like a Ontario punk folk rock band, and I'd seen them on Much Loud, and I think at that point they were on Much Music a lot too, and I was really obsessed with them, and I got to see them at the Casbah, and it was really exciting to me because it was like these guys who were on TV and music who I listened to consistently. They're like out there and in a really small and intimate space, and it, before that I had only seen like Avril Lavigne and Sum 41 at like stadiums. So like being able to experience art in a cool intimate space like that was really exciting, and and like I went with friends, but it went a little bit too late and they couldn't stay out so late. But I was basically there alone for the show, and it was, yeah, just like a really exhilarating and new, novel and exciting experience. And I think from there too, because I knew a lot of people who were playing music locally in the city, but was too intimidated or felt like I was too young to take part. But after I had done that and finally been to the Casbah, I felt comfortable going to more shows at the Casbah and being in that setting. And I feel like that was basically, yeah, the beginning of me being stoked on stuff like that, for sure.
Cool. So, would you say it kind of inspired your DIY ethos? Like, it kind of broke the seal in a
Uh,
way, like, oh, I can do that too.
Well, probably, the idea had been established at that point, but I feel like that didn't really happen until a few years later. Because like I feel like when I went to that show, it was still like the Casbah to me, and even though it was like smaller and intimate and like, not like multi-$1,000, I mean, not $1,000, 1,000 people capacity room, but it still felt like an established thing. You're still like at a bar, you're still at a venue. And I think what changed that for me was when Snake Charmer, like this local like hardcore power violence band in Hamilton, and like people in that band played in other hardcore bands in Hamilton, in at the Casbah and stuff like that. But when they started playing, I think their first show was an alleyway behind Hammer City Records, and I didn't get to go to that one. But I think maybe the first time I saw them was just in my friend's basement at a house party, and that was just really exciting. That band really reestablished what music could be. Like they put their music out on cassette, and yeah, we're just playing. I saw them in many houses, playing houses and alleyways and other unconventional spaces, and that made it even more seem more accessible, and like introduce the idea of DIY to me. And it was like, oh, we don't have to be at the Casbah, or especially me being a minor at the time, you don't have to be in a space where you have to spend money or drink alcohol or whatever. You just go to see music and have a fun time. So I think that like getting in, like when Snake Charmer started and like being introduced to that band and being a part of that, and that's what led me to want to start bands and like eventually take part in that in a more substantial way, for sure.
Amazing. Um, so you've kind of talked about how your music taste and the music that you play is like hardcore. Please explain, how do you go from listening to hardcore to mixing like house and EDM? Please like bridge the gap for us, and maybe for people that aren't as aware of like, I don't know, how genres can influence each other, because there's like tropes, right? And like in music, there's like, oh, there's the people that only listen to this and that. And obviously it's never, no one can ever be pigeonholed. People can have such like a versatility.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a word? They can have a
Yeah.
versatile like range when it comes to listening. So if you could speak more to, yeah, your mix and how that comes from like also your love of hardcore. Are those things connected or not?
I guess I think the connection between the two is, I guess, for me, both genres present an opportunity for like physical catharsis, because I do personally really really like dancing, and I think my form of dancing for either genre might not be totally similar, but at least the way it the what it does for me is the same, I'd say. But yeah, I grew up listening to all kinds of music always. Like my dad was really into like punk and heavier music and metal and whatever, and my mom was into all kinds of things. Like my dad was like listening to Slayer and Iron Maiden and whatever, but my mom was like listening to like the Smiths and Fiona Apple and stuff like that. And but like I feel it's interesting because I was thinking about this a lot recently. Like when I was really young, like house music was just like mainstream music. Like it might be silly to say, but like the Venga Boys or like Dirty Vegas and like Alice DJ and Prozac and stuff like that. Like it was just mainstream and popular, and you were always hearing it. And like I think one of my earliest memories of enjoying music was One More Time by Daft Punk, or even Around the World by Daft Punk. Like I very distinctly remember seeing the music video for Around the World on Much Music, and just like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I think when even seeing the music video for One More Time, and that it was like anime, and at the time, like Digimon and Pokemon really popular, like it felt like they created this like entire world to like be encapsulated by. And then like, I don't know, so I think it was like a really really nostalgic thing for me, like hearing music that sounds like that, like really just brought out like a really raw feeling of nostalgia and feeling young. And I think, especially, I mean, it's no secret that Daft Punk is incredible, and especially Discovery is just an incredible record front to back. And when I was around the same age, actually, when I saw Attack in Black, I was really into like Justice and Mastercraft and like Crystal Castles, and like that sort of stuff was really really big, and kind of revisited Daft Punk, and I was like obsessed with Daft Punk and Justice when I was like 13 and 14. And I think, yeah, they just really captured that sound that reminded me of like, I don't know, like you're just at the mall or like waiting in line to see the Pokemon movie, and you hear like One More Time come on the radio. It just like, it feels like, I don't know, like I was a kid again. Or like Fatboy Slim, I think is a really good example, or Chemical Brothers, stuff like that. Like it just sounds, hearing music like that reminds me of being like 5 years old.
Wow, yeah. I remember my mom would always listen to the Z103 mix, the Drive at 5, with DJ Danny D. And like, they were always saying, like, we're playing house. And I was very young with my brother in the car, and we are like, why are they playing house? Like, picturing they have like a Fisher Price house, and like, because that's what we thought house was. Yeah, so I kind of relate to what you're saying a bit with like the nostalgia piece. One big song for me is like, this is the rhythm of the night. Like that, my mom was always playing that. So yeah, that's cool. I think it's like interesting to touch on how nostalgia can inform our taste going forward, and how we can kind of like reclaim it. I also think it's cool too in like, I guess like hip hop culture, finding all the samples once you start getting into funk. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where like spending hours on who sampled it.
Yeah,
just
totally.
going
I
down
feel
little
like
rabbit holes.
when I was 13, it was like, and really obsessed with Daft Punk, I feel like that was like the beginning of like, look at all these bands that Daft Punk sampled. And it was like Windows Movie Maker videos, like the classic like blue background, white text, like Places. And so yeah, definitely, it was fun to look into that. And like Justice, super guilty for that too, and like being able to discover that, lots of fun for sure.
Cool. Jeff, do you have anything you want to ask? Anything you want to share? I don't know, how do you relate to like nostalgia when it comes to your listening tastes?
Yeah, like I think hearing you play so many times, I feel like everything's makes sense now. I think that really informed your selection and how you think about sound, not just in the band scene, but also in the dance, EDM framework, or the the set that you created.
And I think another thing,
Yeah.
sorry, before you ask your question, sorry to cut you off, my apologies. But another thing too is video game music, because like around that same time is when I first got my PlayStation 1 for Christmas. And like, I don't know how much you guys were playing video games in the late 90s, but I had this game Ape Escape, which is my all-time favorite video game. And the
Yes.
music for Ape Escape, Soichi Terada, that, and like, and again, around the same time, like in ninth grade, I was just rediscovering that. And I was like, I would just YouTube search PlayStation 1 music and like just
Mm.
search that. And just, yeah, I was listening to the Ape Escape music a lot too. And I think that's maybe a little bit more like drum and beady, or drum and bass, sorry, and like techno or whatever. But yeah, another aesthetic too is just like really fun and happy and playful stuff, which is like, obviously they were trying to make cool music for kids to listen to, but yeah, that's another big element as well.
As
Yeah.
someone that played a lot of like Mario games as like my predominant nostalgic childhood games, I feel robbed of the nostalgic experience because those songs, they don't fuck. They're not tough. Like it's
Another
very
one.
clockable as like Mario.
Yeah, another one, even though like I didn't have an Xbox at the time, but I remember my stepbrothers, or like my step uncle had, there was like a demo disc for Xbox with Jet Set Radio on it. And I don't know if either of you know of that game. And I barely played that game, but it like imprinted on my brain so hard. It's like about these like roller skater kids who like do graffiti. And the soundtrack for that game is insane. Like, and it was like, again, not something that I was like consistently playing or listening to, but it was like, getting it more into electronic music now, or like dance music or whatever. I feel like I'm always trying to elicit the feeling of like, yeah, like Jet Set Radio, Ape Escape, and like Daft
Mm.
Punk's Discovery. Like those are the big three for me, I'd say.
Can you name some legendary songs from Ape Escape or the other game?
I'm so bad at titles, but like,
Okay, okay.
I think more specifically, and obviously it's the song you hear the most in Ape Escape, but there's like, you're kind of like in this laboratory and you go through like different portals to travel to like different worlds. But when you're in the laboratory, the song that plays in that laboratory, like I'll like wake up in the morning with that just in my head. Like I'm sad that I don't know the title of it, but yeah, that song is just incredible. Yeah, great
We'll
song.
link
Actually,
it.
there would.
Yeah,
We'll
we're
we'll
gonna
try
link
to
it.
Do
insert.
it.
We'll try to insert here.
Yeah,
here
I'll send it
right
to you.
now.
Yeah. Metal Slug, or are you talking about Metal Gear Solid? Or, like
Metal
about
Gear
the.
Solid.
Okay,
Yeah, I think that's the game.
that's a very
Anyway,
classic
weird
PlayStation 1 for sure.
video game tangent. Yeah,
I know
nostalgia.
people always reference like Tony Hawk Pro Skater, like Basement Jack's "Where's Your Head At," which has actually become like a club anthem. I've noticed in
Hmm.
Hamilton, at least. I've heard it a number of times on a night out, and I always really like, now that I'm mixing myself, I'm like, I really want to mix this into like a
Yeah,
Death Grip
there should
song,
totally be like a
Guillotine.
video
Yeah, we should
completely
just
something.
like start playing PS2 at like
Yes,
our
as
drop-ins,
Whoa,
like
that
making music while we're
as a
playing
D-
video games.
if you
totally.
had a DJ night with like, yeah, like a PS2 video game night, that would undeniably do incredibly well for sure. Depending on the game selection.
Yes.
Yeah, people could
Sure.
bring their own. It would really teach us a lot about turn taking, which is important for back to back, because you can only play four players, or two, or one.
One question that I think, like when we did it with Geneva, I think it's called roll call of honor. So you can spend a minute or two, shout out a few people, places, or things that kind of formed the ethos or the things that you do.
Mhm.
So yes, give like a 1 or 2 minute to kind of shout out those people. Yeah, or reminisce
Yeah, I
about,
guess.
really.
I mean, obviously, I think I kind of brought that up when talking about Snake Charmer. Like that band again, was a really big deal in terms of like introducing me to like more DIY ideas or whatever. I think in a really, really broad way. Um, and I was talking about this with you two, or specifically Nikhil, actually, when we were hanging out the other night. But like the idea of straight edge I think, has always been a really significant thing to me, despite no matter how someone might engage with like substance use, but like the idea of, I don't know, like conscious thought and trying to understand how you fit into what you're doing and accepting your differences but paving like your own path to, I don't know, exist in a space. And like when Minor Threat was like, the band that started straight edge and straight edge hardcore or whatever, was starting to put on shows and trying to figure out ways to put on all ages shows and shows for people who don't drink, and and in a world or at a time when like rock music was very very heavily involved with substance use, like very openly and famously, sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of thing. And I think the idea of like hardcore was like stripping away of all of that and like getting more in tune with like the emotions of things, or community aspects, or how you interact with things or whatever. And I feel like the idea of straight edge kind of pushed that even further, because even though hardcore maybe was different than regular punk or rock music, um it was still, you're still playing in bars, or you're still playing to sell beer or whatever, then like that and stuff like that. So um that, I think that idea was definitely something that was really inspirational to me. It was something that I got into at a young age, and is just really significant to me and something that I think about very frequently. And then another place I would say is like when, like I was talking about earlier, like Snake Charmer, their first show was in the alleyway behind Hammer City Records, and Hammer City Records was a record store here in Hamilton, like punk and metal forward record store, but they sold everything. And I just remember the first time I went there, Brett Hawley was working, and he was just immediately so engaging and just like so excited to have someone in the store. And like if you were going into that store, you definitely like heard about it and were interested. Or even like the sign that they had out on James Street was like, it'd say like punk music, and so people come down with an interest. So when people did, the people who were there were always excited to engage with people who seemed interested. And like him and Craig and Leah and Scott and Dave, all these people who are like in the shop and just creating space for people who wanted to, I don't know, engage with that kind of music or art or whatever. And they frequently put on art shows and had bands play, and just were so always excited to be creating a space and a platform for new and upcoming artists and bands and stuff like that. And I think they were really fortunate because rent for that space was really cheap, but it's so cool that they were just like, more or less paying out of pocket to create this space for people and just have a cool spot to have people do cool stuff in. And yeah, so that's another one. I think another one that was a really really big influence in a space where I actually met you, Vanya, was Casino Art Space, and the folks that were doing stuff there. And maybe not entirely, but semi in tandem with, like, I think that was around the time Strange Waves was starting too. And I feel like a lot of how I was engaging with creativity was through punk or like other kinds of like rock music or indie or whatever else. But like when they opened their space, it felt more abstract and anybody could do anything. Like the first time I went there was just to go and watch But I'm a Cheerleader. Like they were just having movie nights and having people over, and then I started going to poetry nights, and then they would have art openings. And I remember, I think it was New Year's 2017, they had like people DJing in different parts of this giant space that they were renting. And like New Year's 2017 for me and a lot of my friends at Casino Art Space was a really significant night. And I think that was like a moment where I felt like I was engaging with a new community of people who were doing different kinds of things and playing different kinds of music and making different kinds of art. And that was really exciting. So, shout out to everyone at Casino. Specifically, I know Gabe and Amy and Becky. I don't think I knew the other people in the space as well, but everybody doing stuff there was incredible.
Yeah, that was a really cool space. It was like, just to contextualize it for some folks, it was on Mary Street in Hamilton, which is like residential, but it was like, I guess it was like a commercial building that had been rented out, and had the drop ceiling and everything, and like so many different rooms with like clutter, and like then people's like studios, and it was just like a really cool medley of different things.
It was
like, very DIY.
It was basically the second floor of a warehouse it looked cool as well too. And it was always great too because they had that shark hanging in the stairwell, giant. It was like almost like a taxidermy shark hanging in the stairwell. So like as soon as you walk in, it just looks cool.
Yeah, I think Gabe still has that shark actually in their backyard. I went to a show last summer there, and it's still there, along with lots of Carrera marble that fell off the BMO building.
Cool.
Just food for thought. And I think it's cool too because now we're like, I guess, the newer generation that is, I guess, like carrying the torch and like trying to create DIY spaces that, like, other folks, younger folks, are going to be inspired by, like, when they get to their later 20s. So it's just cool to be a part of, like, this legacy. And like the Hamilton Artists Inc., which has been really kind enough to like host places and like have a space for us to do workshops, and then some more things with them happening in the future, and then just some other DIY spaces in Hamilton. So.
Yeah. And I think Monday Press as well, and like It's All Right Ma and Into the Abyss, like are all super integral to like other really amazing and cool and exciting things happening in the city as well. And they deserve a shout out as well.
Absolutely, shout out.
I guess like right now I'm putting on a show. I also put on a excuse me, I'm coughing. I'm putting on a show. I also put on shows under the name You're In. And I'm putting on a show at the end of May 31st at Vertigogo with Dead Tired and Melt Away and my band Cease and another Hamilton band called Sullen. You can find out about that at on my Instagram at yo.ur.in. There's advanced tickets there. But other than that, nothing too much. Like, all of my bands are on the brink of like finishing recording and putting out music. My band Cease and my other band Bad Crush and my other band Stay Down, and my solo project I'm going to be releasing called A Hollow Body. I'm going to be releasing some music through that as well soon. Maybe not immediately, but hopefully by the end of the summer. But yeah, I think that's everything right now. Oh, actually, I think I'm DJing at the Casbah for Dispatch on the 20-something on the last Sunday of the month. Is that one that's happening?
I think so. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, the last Sunday of May.
Lots of stuff happening. There's
Yeah.
so much happening in the city. I think people talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I think it's good to have like that public programming and do that like kind of engagement piece, which can kind of happen, through like skill sharing workshops, and I think just being generally like a friendly person. I think that's important for engagement and like bringing people out and giving people opportunity. That's what made me classic. That's what made me feel very comfortable at, for example, Casino Art Space, their poetry thing, they had feature readers and then they had open mic. So I would go to the open mic, and eventually a couple years later, the folks that were running it the Moon Milk Collective. Then I got to be a feature reader like a couple years later, like once I'd kind of developed, I guess, my work a bit more. So yeah, I think giving people the opportunity is really amazing too. And we have some opportunities. Our cohort students, the cohort students,
The
are going to be on the radio coming up too. Shout out CFMU. Like,
yes.
it's pretty cool to just have your own radio show. You can submit a proposal. You don't even have to be a McMaster student. So yeah, that's an important like kind of mobile space too, I think, for like making people feel involved and engaged.
Totally.
Is there anything we want to add on before we wrap up the episode today, the after show episode?
Ask me anything.
I was gonna ask because you said that like the CDJs intimidated you in the interview, and then Jeff asked you, "Oh, can you speak more to that?" And you're like, "I haven't thought about it enough." So, wondering if you thought about it a little bit more, and if you would courageously share with us.
Yeah.
But
That's
understandably, if not,
a great question for sure. Yeah, I mean, something I talked with Jeff after I did the show is, and something I realized about myself practicing leading up to the show, is that like I feel like, despite how some people might feel about it, I feel like when I'm DJing, it's actually a lot more a visual thing for me. Like I've realized that I'm like, I really need to be able to see the waveforms and like how things link up and stuff like that. And that's just how like the system I use on my own works, and you're able to like see things better. So going into the radio show, I wasn't totally sure about like what the system there was like. And I wasn't totally prepared as much as I would have liked to have been. So yeah, it was like difficult to try and like basically rewire my brain to understand a different interface. But I think, that's an element of DJing that everybody should go through. And it's something that I'm realizing as well, that like, you're I'm not always going to be able to bring my own controller everywhere. And as much as like I think that that's really cool to be able to bring my own stuff and just be like, oh cool, like you provided something for me, but I don't know, I like doing it my own way. But I'm realizing that experience definitely helped me learn that like, I should be able to be versatile and adaptable and not so stubborn and like whatever else, and like not always be so stuck in my ways and be more open to doing things different kinds of ways, at least in terms of DJing. Like I feel like I'm generally pretty versatile in other ways of life, but I feel like up until that point I was kind of like, it's okay for me to do it my way. And like everyone makes fun of the sync button, everyone makes fun of Serato, and everyone makes fun of DDJs, but you know what? It's cool that I like doing it this way. But now So now I'm like, okay, I guess I have to, grow up and learn how to do it other ways too.
Thank you for saying that. That needed to be, someone needed to put like their stake in that. Someone needed to claim that.
Hot topic.
I mean, I still think it's cool.
Controversial.
Like I still think it's cool.
Yes.
It's
polarizing,
like
even.
I was thinking about it today, and it's like, and some might not even see this as a good thing, but like it's like bowling with the bumpers on. And like, sure, people might not think bowling with the bumpers up is fun, but like if you bowl the bumpers up, it is so much fun. You knock the pins over every time, and it's it's not as competitive, it's not as like show offy or athletic. It's just like I want to have fun and I want to knock the pins down. That's what pressing the sync button is like to me, and I think that is cool. I think that's cool. It's cool to have fun. It's cool to do things well. If you I don't know. That's just how I think about it.
No, like the sync button is not like just the button. It's like, is the quantize on? Are the grid lines analyzed correctly? It's just, I feel like it's not just like one thing, but it's like the whole thing itself. It's like how things are set up, how are you setting the system up to your liking. But I think it's just like like, why is this such a hot topic for like a controversial thing? Like, I don't know why people are so stuck up too. But I've had so many dispatch gigs where I turn it on, and it just betrays me all the time. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's interesting. Yeah, I think there's different reasons people use it. Like, it kind of separates I don't know, people that have different intentions. So if someone's kind of like trying to really master the craft of DJing, and like, I don't know how many people are actually trying to do that, but if people are just out to have fun and like, I don't know, like provide a vibe, because it's like romanticizing the aux. Like,
totally. It's
it's
not that
like,
serious.
look at all this music I think is cool. Like, share this moment with me. Maybe
Exactly.
like you learn a new song, or maybe you hear an old song that makes you feel like connected to your environment and your surroundings. So there's different reasons I think people are DJing, and like the sync button probably like is the, I don't know, this thing that represents, yeah, just everyone's different intention when it comes to DJing. It's all being distilled into this one topic, the sync button.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Like, yeah, it shows your intention behind it, because it's like, I'm like, when I'm using my own controller and pressing sync, like, I'm doing exactly what I want to do. And like, I'm a busy guy. I can't spend hours every day practicing. Like, it's like I can do what I want to do right now, or I can spend months of my life trying to do it a harder way. And like, and maybe in other instances and other art forms that might make sense, but like in this, it kind of just seems like, I don't know, a little show offy, or I don't know. Like, I don't get it as much, but maybe I'm new to this world or whatever. But it's like, I'm doing what I want to do right now. Why do I have to make it harder for myself? I don't know.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
totally.
I think too with the CDJs, like the struggle you felt with the CDJs, I feel you.
You were
And
not alone.
we were just talking about, me and Jeff, you and I were talking about this the other day, like all the cohort students that are going to go play on the CDJs, it's like playing on a CDJ, it's kind of a rite of passage. Like, in terms of, it's probably not going to go how you planned. And like, it just kind of builds that skill, I think, of like adaptability and like resiliency, like in the moment, and like being able to improvise in the moment. And it's like, it's hectic, but
we
it
improvise,
builds character.
turn things around, kind of.
Yeah, all the moments where the mix sounds good and makes sense was Jeff, and I was just sitting in the chair talking.
You can't.
Just to be transparent, like, you know.
Daddy Jeff to the rescue. That was me. Like,
Record it. Have a
Right
thanks
on.
for being on the after show.
Thanks for having me.
Without talking about music, and we always end up talking about music at one point, and just
Yeah,
like tuning
cool.
in and
yeah,
roasting.
thanks y'all for
Thank
staying
you.
locked. Cuff it.
let's
We're
say
gonna cuff
goodbye.
it. Toodles.